The click of the new lock echoed through the quiet house. My house. The sound felt like a gunshot, not loud, but final, deadly. My son, Michael, stood there, a small smile on his face. He held a new, shiny brass key. He didn't offer it to me. Not yet. Don't worry, Mom, he said, his voice a little too casual, a little too bright. We just updated things. For security. I watched him. My heart was a stone in my chest. This was the boy I'd raised. The boy who'd scraped his knee on this very porch, cried into my apron in this very kitchen. Now, he was a stranger. Security? I asked. My voice was thin. It barely carried. He nodded, still smiling. Yes, we just want you to feel safe. And for us to feel safe, too. He gestured vaguely around the hall. It's a big house. Lots of valuables now. My eyes drifted to the worn floorboards, the old wallpaper, the scuff marks by the coat rack where Michael used to throw his backpack. Valuables. The memories were my valuables. Then he finally extended his hand. In his palm lay a single key, a small, dull silver key. Not the brass one, not the master key. This is for your room, Mom, he said. He didn't meet my gaze. And for the back door, just for when you go out. I looked at the key. My own key, the one I'd used for 50 years, was heavy in my pocket. It was solid, familiar. It opened everything, every door in this house. This new key felt light, insignificant. My room, I repeated. The words tasted like ash. Yes, for your privacy, he insisted. His smile tightened. And ours. It's better this way. You're our guest now, Mom. Our honored guest. Guest. The word hung in the air. It stung more than any slap. This was my home. Every brick, every floorboard, every memory woven into its very fabric. My late husband, Thomas, and I had built this life here. We'd raised Michael here. Now I was a guest. In my own home. I took the key. It felt cold against my skin. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? His eyes, once so full of warmth, now held a cold, calculating glint. He had already decided. Later that evening, the reality sank in. I tried my old key on the front door. It slid in smoothly, but it didn't turn. The click was gone. The familiar resistance wasn't there. It was just a useless piece of metal now. A relic. The key Michael gave me worked on my bedroom door. It worked on the back door. But the living room? The dining room? Michael's new office? Which used to be Thomas's study? Locked. I was locked out of my own life. Dinner was a quiet affair. Michael and his wife Sarah sat at the head of the table Thomas had carved himself. Their children, my grandchildren, chatted about school. I sat at the far end, near the kitchen door, the guest seat. Sarah made a point of asking, "Is everything all right, Martha? Do you need anything?" Her voice was sweet, too sweet. It was the tone you'd use with a distant relative, a visitor who might be leaving soon. I nodded. "Everything is fine, Sarah." I ate my meal. It tasted bland. I watched them. Michael laughed at something his son said. Sarah smiled at her daughter. They looked like a perfect family in my house, and I was just there, a shadow in the background. The next morning, I tried to make breakfast, a simple omelette like I always did. Michael's favorite. "Oh, Mom," Sarah said, sweeping into the kitchen. Her perfume was overpowering. "We usually handle breakfast now. You should just relax, enjoy your retirement." She nudged me gently away from the stove. My hand, still holding the whisk, felt useless. I watched her expertly crack eggs into a bowl. In my kitchen, with my pans. "I just wanted to help," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's fine, Mom. Really, you've done enough." Her tone was dismissive, a little too firm. I retreated to my room. My room, my sanctuary. It felt more like a prison cell now, with its own designated key. I sat on the edge of my bed, the morning sun streaming through the window. This window, where I used to watch Michael play in the yard Thomas had so carefully tended. Everything felt tainted, distorted. I remembered a conversation with Thomas years ago. He was always so meticulous, so careful about everything to do with this house, our future. He taught me so much, especially about being prepared, about protecting what was ours. He always said, Martha, never forget who truly owns what. Paperwork is more powerful than any lock. That thought resonated. Paperwork. He had been so particular about everything: wills, deeds, insurance. Things I hadn't thought about in years, trusting Michael to handle everything after Thomas passed. But Michael was handling it, all right. Just not in the way Thomas or I had ever imagined. The feeling of being a guest, of being an inconvenience, grew heavier with each passing day. I was told when I could watch television in the living room, asked to keep my bedroom door closed, reminded not to use too much hot water. My life, once vibrant and full, was being systematically erased. The pain was a dull ache. It settled deep in my bones. But beneath the ache, something else began to stir. A quiet resolve, a memory of Thomas's wisdom, a silent challenge. They had changed the locks. They had called me a guest, but they had forgotten one crucial detail. They had forgotten who still held the real master key, the one no locksmith could ever replace. And that night, as the new lock clicked from the inside, sealing me in my designated room, I didn't cry. Instead, I reached for the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one Thomas had made, the one I hadn't opened in years. I knew exactly what I was looking for, and I knew it would be waiting. The new silence in the house was heavier than any words. It pressed down, suffocating. My hand still hung in the air, a phantom touch on the doorknob that was no longer mine. He watched me, smirk barely concealed. "You're a guest now, remember?" His voice, flat, final. A guest. In the home where I had raised him, where I had nursed his childhood fevers, celebrated his first steps, comforted his teenage heartbreaks. This was not a house. This was my life. Every creak in the floorboards held a memory. Every stain on the wallpaper, a story. Now they felt like accusations. I retreated to my room. The new key, a stark metallic weight in his pocket, felt like a branding iron on my soul. I heard him moving about. The deliberate clatter of his keys on the hall table, the loud click of a lock downstairs. He was marking his territory, erasing mine. The next morning, the subtle shifts began. Small, insistent, like water eroding stone. He started using my coffee maker, left his dirty dishes for me to find. Not a request, an expectation. He sat in my armchair in the living room, flipping through channels with a remote he now deemed his. "Oh, Dad, you can watch in your room," he'd say, without looking up. "I'm watching the game." My room, the one designated for the guest. My sanctuary, now my confinement. I remembered the day we bought this house. My late husband, God rest his soul, had pointed to the sturdy oak front door. "This is where our life begins, my love," he'd said. "A home built on love and belonging." We poured every penny, every dream into it. His tiny hand, my son's, had left an imprint in the wet cement of the pathway. A testament, a promise. Now, that promise felt like ash. I started to feel like an intruder in my own spaces, hesitating before opening the refrigerator, asking if I could use the washing machine. Each question felt like a surrender, each yes from him, a permission slip to exist. He had always been headstrong, driven. I had seen it as ambition then. Now it was a hunger, for control, for dominance. He wanted the house, yes, but more, he wanted my power, my authority, my very sense of self. One afternoon, I went to the small study, a room I had lovingly curated over decades. Books filled shelves from floor to ceiling, my husband's old pipe stand, a desk where I had written countless letters, paid endless bills, a quiet refuge. The door was locked. I tried the knob gently at first, then a little harder. Nothing. He emerged from the kitchen, a glass of water in his hand. Oh, Dad, I'm using that as my office now. I have some important calls. He gestured vaguely. You can use the living room for your reading. My books, my memories, locked away behind a door in my own house. The rage simmered, hot, potent. But I kept my face blank. A lifetime of quiet strength taught me how to mask the storm within. Later, I sat on my bed, the weight of 100 memories pressing down. I thought of my husband, how he would have stood up for me, how he would have never allowed such disrespect. A tear traced a path down my cheek. For him, for me, for the life that was being stripped away. Fear gnawed at me. If he could lock me out of my study, what next? My bedroom? The garden I had nurtured for 40 years? Would he one day call a nursing home and tell them I was ready to leave? To be discarded? No. A whisper, a resolve, something deep within me stirred. A stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. I had built this life. I had raised this son. I was not a guest. I was the foundation, the very structure. My mind drifted back, years and years, to paperwork, to signatures, to old boxes in the attic, filled with documents I hadn't looked at in ages, deeds, wills, papers that felt like ancient history. But perhaps they held more than just history. I closed my eyes. A faint image flickered in my mind. Not a key, not yet, but a sense of knowing, of ownership that went beyond a mere lock and chain. A different kind of key, the real master key, the one he couldn't change. A quiet hum started in my chest. A plan began to form, a cold, determined clarity replacing the fear. He had changed the locks. He called me guest, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had forgotten who truly held the power. He had forgotten the real master key, and I was about to remind him. The silence of being a guest in my own home was louder than any shouting. Every creak of the floorboards, every whispered conversation from Mark and Sarah, echoed the emptiness in my heart. They didn't even bother to hide their discussions anymore. Their voices, clear and dismissive, drifted into my room. He never uses that den anyway, Sarah would say. We can turn it into a home office. Or, the garden is so overgrown. We'll hire someone to clear it out and then put in a patio. He never sits outside. They spoke as if I were already gone, a ghost inhabiting a space they were eager to reclaim. But I was no ghost. I was a man, observing, listening, and slowly, quietly, planning. My vision might have dimmed with age, but my inner eye saw their true colors with stark clarity. The contractor visits became more frequent. One afternoon, I heard Mark say, "We're thinking of knocking down this wall, opening up the kitchen. It'll really brighten the place. Increase the appeal for when we sell." The word sell hit me like a physical blow. Sell my home? The home I built? The home where my children grew up? Where my wife passed away? I clutched my chest, a sharp pain, not of a failing heart, but of a broken spirit. For a moment, despair threatened to swallow me whole. My knees felt weak. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled to my old armchair, a worn relic that had witnessed countless family moments. It offered little comfort now. Then, a different feeling began to bloom. A cold, hard resolve. I had given everything to this family, my time, my love, my savings, and this was my reward, to be pushed aside, stripped of dignity, and have my legacy dismantled before my very eyes. No, not without a fight, not without showing them the true meaning of ownership. I remembered Mark's smirk when he called me guest, the casual cruelty in his eyes. It was a look I would never forget, a look that fueled the fire in my belly. Guest, he said. Well, guests indeed. Leave. But first, they can make quite a commotion. My old room, once a sanctuary, became my war room. I retrieved the dusty box from under my bed. Inside, among old photographs and my wife's treasured recipes, lay the legal documents. I spread them out on my small desk, my spectacles perched on my nose. My hands, gnarled with age, trembled slightly as I smoothed out the creased papers. The property deed, the most important one. It was decades old, typewritten, with a faded seal. It clearly stated elder's full name and wife's full name as joint tenants. My wife was gone, but the ownership was clear. It was mine, entirely and unequivocally mine. No mention of Mark, no amendments, no hidden clauses, nothing he could twist or distort. I felt a quiet triumph, a small flicker of power returning. This was the first piece of the master key, solid, undeniable proof. But I needed more than just proof. I needed strategy. I needed someone to guide me through the labyrinth of the law. My thoughts turned to Arthur, my old friend, the retired solicitor. He was meticulous, honorable, and fiercely protective of those he cared for. The next morning, I waited for Mark and Sarah to leave for work. The moment I heard the door click shut and the car pull away, I picked up the phone. My fingers, steady now, dialed Arthur's number. Arthur, it's Elder's name, I said when he answered, my voice raspy with anticipation. My dear friend, it's been too long. How are you holding up? His voice, warm and genuine, was a welcome relief. Not so well, Arthur. Not so well. I need your help. It's about Mark and the house. I began to recount everything, choosing my words carefully, painting a clear picture of the situation. I described the changed locks, the guest notes, the contractor visits, their plans to modernize and sell. I told him about the subtle emotional abuse, the way Mark and Sarah had systematically stripped me of my status in my own home. I spoke of the deed, held firmly in my hand as I spoke, a comforting presence. Arthur listened, his quiet presence on the other end, a pillar of strength. He interjected only once to ask, "And you have signed absolutely nothing over to him? No new agreements, no transfer of title, no power of attorney?" "Nothing," I affirmed, my voice gaining strength. "Never. He never even asked. Not directly, until all this started. And I certainly never agreed." "Excellent," he said, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his sharp legal mind. "This simplifies matters immensely. You are the undisputed sole owner of that property." He paused, then continued, his voice firm. "What Mark is doing, my friend, is not just disrespectful, it's illegal. He has changed locks on a property he does not own. He is attempting to unlawfully dispossess you. He is treating you as a tenant, a guest, without any legal basis, in your own home. This constitutes trespass and potentially elder financial abuse and psychological torment." The words hit me with the force of truth. Trespass, elder abuse. I had felt it deeply, but to hear it articulated by a legal expert solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about my feelings. It was about the law. Yes, and we can prove it. The locks are evidence. His exclusionary behavior and those notes are evidence. His discussions with the contractor about selling are evidence of intent. And that deed, my friend, that deed is the ultimate, undeniable master key. Master key, I repeated, the metaphor now taking on a powerful new meaning. It wasn't a physical key, it was the key to justice, to law, to truth. Precisely, Arthur said, the master key that unlocks the door to your rights, the key that will shut down his schemes. What do you suggest I do, Arthur? I asked, my voice now steady, imbued with a new-found purpose. First, he instructed, continue to document everything, those notes, any text messages he might send. If you can, discreetly record conversations where he makes those remarks about your house or your guest. Check your jurisdiction's laws on recording. Even without recordings, the notes and circumstantial evidence will be compelling. Gather any and all relevant documents, utility bills, property tax statements, anything that reinforces your long-standing ownership and residence, he continued, laying out a clear path. Then we will draft a formal legal notice, a letter from my office, informing Mark that he is trespassing on your property, that his actions are unlawful, and demanding immediate cessation of all such activities. We will give him a specific time frame to comply. If he does not, we proceed with legal action. We can even seek an injunction to prevent him from taking any further steps to change or sell the house. A wave of relief, coupled with a cold determination, washed over me. This was it. This was the fight I needed to wage. And when do we send this letter, Arthur? I asked, a faint grim smile touching my lips. Once we have everything thoroughly documented, he replied, and perhaps we can choose a moment for its delivery that will have the maximum impact, a moment when his presumptions of ownership are at their peak. I thought of Mark's upcoming housewarming, the party he was throwing to declare his new dominion over my home. A perfect stage. I think I know just the right moment, Arthur, I said, a spark of defiance in my eyes. He's planning a housewarming party in a few days to show off his new house. Ah, Arthur chuckled softly. Poetic, wouldn't you say? We can arrange for a process server to deliver the notice right there, amidst his guests. It would certainly make an impression. The idea was a jolt of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. It was not revenge. Not exactly. It was justice, delivered with precision and flair. Over the next few days, I became a silent spy in my own home. My old phone, which I rarely used for anything but calls, became my covert camera. I took photos of the new locks on the doors, the ones I couldn't open. I photographed the petty notes Sarah left on the kitchen counter, each one a testament to their tyranny. I even managed to record Mark talking on the phone in the hallway, boasting, "Yes, we finally got Dad to understand he's just staying with us now. We're redoing the whole place." Each photo, each recording, each piece of paper I carefully tucked away was a brick in the wall I was building, a wall of evidence, a wall to protect my home. Mark, oblivious in his self-importance, noticed nothing. He was too busy arranging catering, discussing guest lists with Sarah, absorbed in the fantasy of his new life in my house. He even brought me a new set of keys one evening, a single, ornate key. "Just so you don't feel left out, Dad," he said with a condescending smile. "It's to the back shed, for your gardening tools." I took the key, feeling its cold, useless weight in my palm. It was a clear symbol of my diminished status, a key to an outbuilding, not to my own home. "Thank you, Mark," I said, looking him straight in the eye, a faint, unreadable smile on my lips. "Very thoughtful indeed. I appreciate having access to my tools." The subtle emphasis on "my" went completely over his head. He walked away, satisfied, thinking he had pacified me. He thought he had given me a token. He had no idea I already possessed the real master key. and soon I would use it to unlock a truth that would shatter his carefully constructed world. The housewarming loomed closer. I could feel the tension, the quiet hum of anticipation. From Mark and Sarah, a joyous one. From me, a grim, determined one. The stage was set. The master key was forged. I knew this would be painful, not just for Mark, but for me too. To confront my own son in such a public legal way was heartbreaking. But what other choice did he leave me to quietly fade away? Discarded and humiliated? No, my wife wouldn't have wanted that. I wouldn't allow it. The clock was ticking. Every moment brought the housewarming closer. And with it, the moment the master key would finally turn. The chill of his words still settled deep in my bones. Guest, in my own home, a word meant to diminish, to shrink me into something temporary, something easily dismissed. But those words, meant to shackle me, had instead forged a key made of resolve, of bitter experience, and of absolute, unwavering ownership. He didn't know it yet, but I had begun to turn that key, slowly, imperceptibly. The following days were a study in silent warfare. He walked around my house as if he owned every plank of wood, every faded photograph on the mantelpiece. He rearranged furniture without asking, moved my treasured plants to sunless corners, complained about my old-fashioned taste. He even started inviting his friends over, loud and boisterous, treating the living room as his private domain, barely acknowledging my presence as I sat, a ghost in my own life. "Mother, could you perhaps make yourself scarce?" he'd suggest, a patronizing smile twisting his lips. "We're having a few people over, you know, for some proper adult conversation." Proper adult conversation, as if decades of living, raising him, building this very home, hadn't earned me a seat at any table. Each slight was a fresh nail hammered into the coffin of our relationship. Each casual dismissal a validation of my decision. The decision I had made in the quiet, lonely hours after he'd changed the locks. I remembered the worn leather-bound book of deeds tucked away in the old safe behind the loose brick in the fireplace. The very safe where I kept my original will, unchanged for years, listing him as the sole heir. That safe and those papers, they were more than just documents. They were the true master key. My visits to Mr. Henderson, my solicitor, had been carefully timed. I told Jonathan I was going to see Mrs. Peterson, a widowed friend from church. He barely grunted a response, engrossed in a video game. He didn't care where I went, as long as I wasn't in his way. That suited me perfectly. Mr. Henderson was a kind man, with spectacles perched on his nose, and a sympathetic sigh for every indignity I recounted. He listened patiently as I explained everything: the changed locks, the guest remark, the slow erosion of my dignity. He looked at me, not with pity, but with respect. "Mrs. Davies," he said, his voice gentle, "the house is entirely in your name. It has been since your husband passed. You have full legal control." I knew that, of course, but knowing it and using it were two different things. For years I had held on to the belief that family was family, that love and blood ties were enough, that a son would honor his mother. How foolish I had been. "I want to change the will, Mr. Henderson," I stated, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. "Completely, and I want to set up a trust for the house." He nodded, making notes. "And the beneficiary of this trust, Mrs. Davies?" I took a deep breath. This was it. The point of no return. The moment I chose justice over a misguided, one-sided loyalty. "It won't be Jonathan," I said, the words feeling heavy, yet liberating. "It will be a charity, one that supports elderly people who have been, shall we say, displaced. A small, ironic smile touched my lips. And I want a clause, a very specific clause, that the house, upon my passing, is to be sold, with all proceeds going to the trust, but that Jonathan is to be given a grace period of precisely 3 days to vacate the premises once the will is read. Mr. Henderson paused, his pen hovering over the paper. That's quite specific, Mrs. Davies. It needs to be, I replied, my gaze firm. He called me a guest. He gave me no notice. He changed the locks. I intend to give him notice. A very clear, very specific notice. 3 days. Not 3 weeks, not 3 months. 3 days. He continued writing, a faint rustle of paper filling the silence. The legal jargon he used was complex, but the meaning was crystal clear. My house, my rules, my legacy, my choice. The master key was being recut, not in brass, but in ink. The next step was a bit more direct. It involved a letter, a registered letter. It wouldn't be served yet, not directly to Jonathan, but it needed to be prepared. A formal notice. Not an eviction notice, not yet, but a notice of my intent to restructure my estate. A polite legalistic warning that the ground beneath his feet was shifting. I signed the documents in Mr. Henderson's office, my hand steady. Each stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The weight that had settled on my shoulders since Jonathan changed those locks began to lift, replaced by a quiet, determined resolve. Back in my house, Jonathan was oblivious. He was talking on the phone, laughing loudly, making plans for his new home theater system in the living room. Oh, yeah, Mom's just around, he casually dismissed when asked about me. She's fine, just doing her thing. My thing. My thing was signing away his future, securing my dignity, and ensuring that no other mother would suffer as I had, in this house, at the hands of their own child. I watched him, a stranger living in my home. The boy I had raised, sacrificed for, loved beyond measure, had become this entitled, unfeeling man. The bitterness was a physical ache, but it was now laced with a steely resolve. I retrieved a small ornate silver box from my dresser. Inside, among old letters and dried flowers, was a duplicate key to the house. The original master key, the one Jonathan thought he had replaced. This one, however, was a symbolic key now. The real master key was not metal, but paper, legal paper. I held the physical key in my palm, feeling its cold metal. It represented the past. The physical access Jonathan had denied me, but the legal papers, signed and sealed, represented the future. The future where I held the true power. He had called me a guest. Soon he would understand the meaning of a host who had decided to withdraw her hospitality, not with anger, but with quiet, devastating finality. The documents were in motion. The process was irreversible. All that was left was the timing, the careful, deliberate timing of the reveal. It would not be loud. It would not be a shouting match. It would be a quiet, undeniable dismantling of his world. I placed the silver box back, my mind calm, my heart surprisingly light. The game was no longer Jonathan's. It was mine, and I was ready to play my final hand. The moment of truth was approaching, not with a bang, but with the subtle rustle of legal papers, a registered letter, and a quiet, dignified exit. Or rather, a quiet, dignified reclaiming. He would soon learn that a house isn't just bricks and mortar. It's an agreement, an understanding, a legacy, and when you break that agreement, you lose more than just a roof over your head. You lose the very foundation beneath your feet. I closed my eyes, picturing his face when the inevitable arrived. The surprise, the confusion, the dawning horror. It wouldn't bring back the years of love, the shattered trust, but it would bring justice, a bitter, yet necessary justice. The final act was yet to unfold, but the stage had been set. The curtains were about to rise, and I, the guest, was about to show him exactly who the real master of this house truly was, and always had been. The taxi pulled away, leaving me standing on the cracked driveway. The porch light was off. The windows, usually glowing with the warmth of my home, were dark, like vacant eyes. Mark had changed the locks. He had changed more than that. He had changed our relationship irrevocably. He emerged from the shadows of the living room, silhouetted against the dim street lights filtering through the bay window. He opened the door just a crack, enough for him to see me, enough for him to deliver his final, cruel blow. "Evelyn," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any warmth. "You're late. I thought you understood the new arrangements." I stood there, a small duffel bag at my feet. The evening air was cool, but a chill deeper than the weather settled in my bones. "New arrangements, Mark?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. "Since when do you make the arrangements for my home?" He chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Since I became the master of it. This isn't your home anymore, Mom. It's mine. And you're a guest, a transient, if you behave." The word guest hung in the air, thick with insult. It was a brand, meant to burn. He was stripping me of my identity, my history, everything I had built. But he didn't know. He never saw beyond his own grasping ambition. He thought he held all the cards. He thought he held the master key. "Let me in, Mark," I said, my voice gaining strength. "We need to talk." He pushed the door open wider, a smirk playing on his lips. "Talk? What's there to talk about? I've made myself clear. You can stay tonight in the guest room, but tomorrow we discuss your future. My future. And it doesn't involve you interfering with my plans for this property." He gestured vaguely around the living room, as if already seeing it transformed, modernized, cleansed of my touch. He saw dollar signs. I saw a lifetime. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, unfamiliar. The smell of his cheap cologne, not my lavender sachets. The silence, not the comforting hum of a home lived in. He moved to block my path, planting himself squarely in the hallway. "And don't even think about trying your old key. I had all the locks rekeyed. Top security. You wouldn't get in with a crowbar." He puffed out his chest, proud of his petty victory. "I know, Mark," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "I know you changed the locks. You spent a good amount of money, I'm sure." His smirk faltered slightly. He expected tears, pleading, not this quiet calm. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, suspicion clouding his face. I reached into my purse, a slow, deliberate movement. My fingers closed around the weight of the old familiar keyring, the one with the brass key, worn smooth from decades of use, the original key to the front door, the one his father had given me on our wedding day. But it wasn't just that key. Attached to it, nestled among others, was a small, ornate key, a safe deposit box key, and in my other hand, a folded document. "This house, Mark," I began, my voice clear, resonating through the silent hall. "This house was paid for, every brick, every shingle, by your father and me. We worked hard. We sacrificed. We built it into a home, not a commodity." His face hardened. "It's my inheritance, Mom. It's mine by right." "You're right," I scoffed softly. "Your father and I made very specific arrangements, Mark. Arrangements designed to protect me, to ensure I would always have a roof over my head. Always." I unfolded the document. It was a certified copy of the deed, updated and notarized. "Your father and I executed a transfer on death deed years ago. But before he passed, we updated it. We created a life estate for me. I hold a life estate, Mark. which means I have the sole right to occupy and use this property for the remainder of my life. You, as the remainder man, inherit only after beer. I'm gone. Not a moment before. His jaw dropped. His eyes darted from the document to my face, then back again. He looked utterly bewildered. That's that's impossible. Dad told me it would be mine when he passed. He told you it would be yours. Eventually. He never said you could throw your own mother out onto the street. He never said you could call me a guest in my own home. My voice was rising now, the indignation finally breaking through the calm. He never said you could treat me with such utter disrespect. But, but the lawyer, Mr. Henderson, he stammered, his bravado crumbling. Mr. Henderson is a fine lawyer, I confirmed, a small sad smile touching my lips. He helped me execute the amendment to the deed, and he also helped me draft a new will. Quite comprehensive, actually. I took a step closer, forcing him to retreat. You see, Mark, when you changed these locks, you didn't just exclude me. You excluded yourself from my life and from my legacy. What are you saying? He whispered, his face pale. I'm saying that everything your father and I built, every penny, every asset, every family heirloom, none of it will pass to you, Mark. Not anymore. Not after this. I held up the safe deposit box key. This key, Mark, opens a box that contains the updated will. It outlines my wishes very clearly. It ensures that the bulk of my estate, after my passing, will go to charities, to causes that truly matter, not to a son who sees his mother as a burden to be discarded. His eyes were wide with shock, disbelief, and then, slowly, a dawning horror. The greed that had fueled him was now turning on itself, consuming his imagined prize. "You can't do that!" he practically yelled, finding his voice again. "It's my birthright. It's always been understood." Understood by whom, Mark? By you? Because I understood something different. I understood that family meant loyalty, respect, love. You've shown me none of those. Only avarice. I paused, letting my words sink in. He stood before me, a grown man, but now looked like a petulant child whose candy had been snatched away. "You changed the locks," I repeated, my voice now soft, almost a whisper, but laced with steel. "You called me a guest. You made your intentions perfectly clear, so I am making mine clear now." I walked past him, heading towards the living room, and then towards the kitchen. He stood frozen, watching me. I opened the cupboard where I always kept the spare key to the back door, the one I had given him years ago, just in case. It was gone. He had taken it. "You wanted to be the master, Mark?" I turned back to face him, the gentle glow from the kitchen light illuminating my resolute expression. "Then you must also understand what true mastery entails. It's not about changing locks or demanding ownership. It's about earning respect. It's about knowing where the real power lies." I reached into my pocket again. This time, I pulled out a small, heavy object. It was an old-fashioned, ornate brass master key. Not a key to the house itself, but a key to a forgotten, sturdy lockbox that had sat hidden in the basement wall for decades. A box containing not only copies of the deeds and wills, but also a small sealed envelope from his father. "This," I said, holding it up, letting the faint light catch its aged gleam, "is the key to understanding everything, the key to the truth. This house is my sanctuary, Mark, my memories, my life, and tonight I am reclaiming it, all of it." He stared at the key, then at me. His face was a mask of utter defeat. The game was over. He had lost. And I, the supposed guest, had just shown him the real master key to the house, the key to my unwavering will and to the truth that had always been there, just waiting to be revealed. The house was silent once more, but this time It was a different silence, not empty, but expectant. What would I do now? What would become of this house, this life, this family, shattered beyond repair? The night was long, and I had a decision to make.